doing a review of some of the academic data. We're also going to talk a little bit about the career readiness survey. We have some guests here to talk a little bit about that as well. I'll give an update on our comprehensive planning and our school planning timelines. Talk a little bit about the possibility of some additional surveys with our comprehensive and school planning, and then ending with talking about possibilities for some data programming. So I'll jump right in. I know for some of you, we've already gone over these data in regards to our assessments, so I'm going to kind of switch it up a little bit to try and keep it a bit more fresh for some people that aren't going to have to see this over and over and over again. So the first thing that I wanted to share is that when we think about our state assessments, we know that they can be valuable pieces of information for us, but they really are high-level pieces of information. So I like to think about data in different levels. So you try to think about our satellite level data, which is really high-level data that shows us trends and patterns. Then we think about our map data, which is a little bit closer to our students' daily experience. These might be things like common assessments. It might be, for us here, we have Acadians data, which is a reading assessment that we do multiple times throughout the year in our elementary schools, or our iReady assessments. This also can be some of the teachers' formative assessments that they're using in their classrooms. And then the really close data is what we think about as our street data. So our street data is what gets us closest to the day-to-day experiences of our students. And so as we're talking tonight, we're going to start by talking about really high-level satellite data. So this is going to be our PSSAs, PBOS scores, it's going to be our Keystone scores, and then we're going to lean into some conversations about survey data and focus questions and focus groups, which gets us closer to the day-to-day experiences of our students in our classrooms. And I know this is a board meeting, a committee meeting, but if you have questions as we're going, I think it's really important that people know what data is telling us and how to ask questions and what questions they might want to ask. So if things come up throughout this, please feel free to interrupt me, and we'll pause for some public comments and questions then as well. So our state standardized assessments, again, tell us our trends and patterns. And they're looking at our trends and patterns in regards to the impact of our core instruction, and that's grade level instruction. So our PSSA exams and our Keystone exams are based on the state standards for a specific grade level. So it's important to keep that in mind, because while they can give us insights into students' individual progress, they're not the best way for us to make really big decisions when we're making changes for individual students. They do give us really information about making changes or adjustments at the district level. And there's two pieces that we look at. We look at proficiency. This is where our students and how are they achieving toward meeting grade level standards. This is when we think about our students that are measuring as advanced or proficient on our PSSA and Keystone exams. And then we have our growth assessments. And our growth is when we're looking at how are we growing all of our students. And this is something that's measured through our PBOS system. So I thought the best way to do this today was actually to give you a little preview of where we are in regards to our proficiency, and then actually show you everything that's accessible to the public all the time. So I want you to be able to leave here today feeling like you are able to dive in more deeply on your own, with resources that you don't have to go through me or anyone at the school district to get the information, but that it's publicly accessible content all the time. So this is information that was shared previously, but I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about it in regards to our trends and patterns. We're still seeing that from 2017 until 2024, while we are having some areas of improvement in regards to our proficiency in ELA, we're still kind of balancing between about 50 to 70%. I want to point out something that's really exciting for me though. So this is our third grade this past school year. And we know that these are some of our students that were pretty dramatically impacted from COVID. When we think about what their early learning experiences looked like, and right before they were coming into our school experience. And so for that group of students, we had 63.8% of those students showing as proficient. So it's very important that we start to think about, this is getting us back on track from where we were pre-COVID in regards to proficiency, okay? And this is all available on the website too. It's on our school district website, the same exact slides, so you can take some more time to look at the different student groups. We can also look at our math proficiency. Again, our third graders were one of our really high points when we look at overall proficiency. So for me, that's a really important indicator that while we have continued to have some pretty profound impacts in regards to unfinished teaching and learning with our students, we are starting to see an uptick. And not every school district saw that same uptick in their third graders. So that's something that I think I'm really excited about seeing that continue. I can also share a little bit about our science trends. And I want to say this with a caveat, because we are moving towards implementation of the STEEL standards. Our STEEL standards, I think I have it on my next slide here, are a new set of standards for science in the state of Pennsylvania. You good? Oh, Chair in the way, I'm so sorry. So one important thing to know is that Pennsylvania was one of the last states to move towards implementation of the new STEEL standards. And the important thing to think about with our STEEL standards is that these were standards that were based on organizations like Next Generation Science Standards and Next Generation Science that looks at the needs in industry and how we can make sure that our educational system is having our students prepared, especially in the areas of science and technology, to enter the workforce. So we are implementing new standards. They are expected to be fully implemented by 2025 throughout the state. And so while I think we've done well with our science PSSAs and Keystones up until this point, this is kind of a big thing for us to be able to work through. The change with the STEEL standards is one, it's science, technology, engineering, environmental literacy, and sustainability. And the concept is that it's every standard, every student. So every student should be getting exposure to all of those subject areas all the way up through 12th grade. The tested grades have shifted a little bit, so we're testing in 5th grade and in 8th grade. Our students will be tested this year with the new standards, but it won't count for accountability. But you will be able to see what those scores look like. So I want to give you that as a caveat, because when we start to look at our scores, I think we've done well with our science scores because we live in a more rural area and a lot of the test has been based on biology and environmental things that our students are pretty used to and exposed to on a regular basis. We want to be very cognizant that we're continuing on the path. So these are our trends with our Keystone exams. This looks at our literature, our algebra, and our biology. Again, this is looking for proficiency or advanced on these exams. Something that is really important to consider as well is that in this slide I'm giving you percentages. Our proficiency percentage is going to include our students that are assessed in middle and in high school combined. So when we start to break apart some of the data, we'll see that we may have had, while I can see the 40.5% feels really exciting when we're comparing it to the 2023 for this, we also had some more 7th and 8th graders that did a little bit better on this exam. So we'll see that in some of the next slides. Again, just another way to look at the average of proficiency over time. Here's our literature, which has continued to go up. We see this bump in our algebra this year. This is actually the number of students though. So this is our literature Keystone exam, and I think it's important to be able to break it down to number of students because it makes it a little bit more tangible for us. When I say percentages, sometimes we can forget that it's individual students that are part of that percentage. So you can see here in each of our grade levels how many students are proficient or not proficient on the exams as a whole. You can see the same thing for our algebra exam. So one of the things you're going to notice is that for the 2024 school year, we did have some more students in 7th and 8th grade that did help to bump up our proficiency average overall, but we still want to be very cognizant about the number of students in our 9th, 10th, and 11th grade that were not proficient on the Keystone exam. Again, same conversation about biology. This is something that I anticipate every school district is going to be having deeper conversations about whether our growth and proficiency on our science exams is going to continue moving forward with the shift for the new standards. When the math standards changed, every school district in the state saw a dip in their math scores. So I am anticipating that we'll see a dip in our science scores. It's not something we're not going to panic about. We already have plans in place of how we're adjusting to meet the needs of our students with this. All right, so anyone have any questions about the proficiency piece before I go on? Okay. So I want to talk to you about what you can find on your own, because you probably will have questions after you review the data in more depth independently. So there's two big sites that we can use to look at assessment data for anyone in the state of Pennsylvania. One of them is the Future Ready Index. And so when we go into the Future Ready Index, this is what we think about as our kind of district report card. There is a link to this on the Berwick area website as well. But if you just Google Future Ready PA, it's going to take you right to this website. It is updated as of the 24-25 school year with a couple caveats. And I'm going to show you what those caveats are. What we can do is, this is the place where you are able to look at similar districts. So we would be able to come in here and we could look at districts that have similar demographics to us in regards to students economically, whether we're looking at any racial breakdowns, if we're looking at any location, we can look at rural versus suburban. But I'm just going to show you how you can find some more information about our specific schools. So I find the easiest way to do this is just to put in our school name. We'll take a look at the high school. So when we come in here, we're going to be able to see, again, we're going to see our state assessment measures, and this is going to show us those two different types of assessments. It's going to show us proficiency, and it's going to show us growth. When we click into our state assessment measures, we can see the same information we just looked at, culminating into one school as a whole, and this is going to show where our proficiency is in regards to advanced and proficient on each of these exams. We're also able to take a look at the proficiency over time, okay? So again, when we talk about state assessments, we try to look at trends and patterns. We try not to look at every individual year on its own, because you miss a lot of the context that comes into this. The second section of this is going to be starting to look at our growth. And this is what we'll take a deeper dive into with PVOS. This is where we look at when students came into our school year, they're projected to be at a certain point by the end of the school year. And PVOS is going to show us whether or not we're growing those students. PVOS doesn't only look at students that are coming in with deficiencies, it's looking at every student. So if a student is projected to be proficient, we want to get them from proficient to advanced. Okay, so we are looking at growing every student. So you can notice that we did have some really great, we always look for blue. Blue is the best color for us to look for when we talk about PVOS. And we saw some really fantastic growth in our high school for our algebra. But, and this is why I think it's really important to have deeper conversations about the data, is that we want to make sure that this growth is sustained. So in 1819 and 1920, we saw, this is not 95% of students, but this is on a 50 to 100 scale. The 95 is indicating that that is how much our students were growing. And I'll give you some more information about PVOS in a few minutes. We want to make sure that that growth is sustained over time. Because if we know that there's a high number of students that are not currently proficient on one of our state exams, we have to sustain blue growth over a number of years, because they need to make more than 1 year's worth of growth, okay? So it's important for us to know that, yes, I'm absolutely going to celebrate that our high school did a beautiful job last year growing a group of students. Our responsibility now is to talk about what did that look like in the classroom and how do we sustain that moving forward. Okay? The other pieces that are going to be in here is advanced placement on our PSSA state assessments. When I talked about some of the caveats of what is updated, attendance and graduation are lagging indicators, which means that when you go into PVAS, this is going to give you data that's a year behind schedule. So when we're doing, for example, our school planning with the high school right now, we're actually pulling their regular attendance rates from this previous school year, and we're using that for our attendance data, and we're also using current attendance data. The same with West Berwick Elementary School. So West Berwick currently has a designation because of some of their student groups for attendance, and so we're making sure that we're not necessarily just looking at this data, but we're looking at the most up-to-date data that we can have to inform our decision making. So when we look at anything in here for attendance or graduation, it's always going to be a year behind schedule. So just keep that in mind. There's other things you can look through here. Again, you can compare schools, find a school. I won't take too much time to go into that. The other piece that I wanted to give you is some information about PVAS. That did not go very far. Maybe. Do you want one too, or do you want to share? I think I have enough copies for everybody. So, PVAS is another site that is totally accessible for you. So anyone in the public can come in and can take a look at where our school district is growing compared to other school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. Again, you can go and you can Google this. I will make sure that I put a link onto our website as well where the other assessment data is to the PVAS site also. So I'm just going to click on public access. So there's nothing special about the way that I'm accessing this. This is something that's open to anyone to be able to look into. And we're going to take a look at our district report. So I'm going to take a look at our value-added assessment. And again, it's every LEA or district in the state. So that's going to include your cyber charter schools, your CTE programs, as well as each individual school. Here we are. And the most important thing for you to keep in mind about PVAS is everything has to do with the color. Our red means that we have significant evidence that our students fell behind where they were projected to go. So these are students that came into our school system expected to be at one place, and when they tested at the end of the year, they did not meet that. They actually went behind what we would have expected from them. Yellow means we have some evidence. And this doesn't mean that a student has not learned anything during the school year. This means we want to have a really good conversation about what might have been going on in the student's life, what might have been the experience, for us to be able to decide what we need to do to provide support to the students. Green means the student maintained. And it's really important to keep in mind that green is not enough if we do not have the vast majority of our students advanced or proficient on the exams. Because green will never get our students to proficient. It means they're maintaining where they were expected to be. It's a great thing that we're doing, but our goal is we want to continue to see blue for consecutive years if we have students that are not hitting our statewide averages in regards to proficiency. Then we have light blue, which shows similar to our yellow. It shows some evidence that our students have gained from year to year. And our dark blue, like that is awesome. That means our students came in, they were projected to be in one place, and whatever we did got them to grow more than they were expected to grow. The cool thing about PVAS and some of the things that you're not going to be able to see in here is that we can pull this down to individual students and groups of students. So we can look at students with IEPs, we could look at just our girls students, we could look at our students that are gifted students, we can look at students that are considered economically disadvantaged, we can break it down into groups of students, classes of students, and we can actually start to have conversations about what might have been different in a student's experience that allowed them to get that type of growth. So it's a really important thing for us to be able to look at. So I'm going to show you two things, and we're going to look at the 2023 to the 2024. So we can see for our math in grades 4 through 8, at the top we have 2023. You can see that we did have some blue growth in some of those grade levels. This school year, we didn't see some of those in our grade levels. And again, this isn't something that I'm going to turn around and say like, oh my gosh, everybody, we're going to panic. We want to take a look at what's happening over time. So what I want to know when I'm having conversations with my 6th grade team, was there something different last year, right? Was there something that came up? Was it a group of students that just didn't jive in the same way that we would have wanted them to jive with our teachers? And we start to have those conversations. Where we do want to have bigger, more extensive district-wide conversations is when we're seeing consistent years in a row where we're not hitting that growth. And so I'm going to finish our presentation in a couple minutes about talking about some of the things that we're doing, because it's great to talk about data and to look at data, but if we're not actually doing anything with it, it's not worth anybody's time to have this conversation. You can also take a look at cohorts of students. So when you're after this, if you want to go back and you want to look at cohorts of students and you have questions and you'd like to say, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about what this actually means? I'm always happy to be able to have those conversations with parents or with the community member, just kind of have a better feel for what this looks like. We can also see for our English language arts, again, we're going to pull this down to see where in 23 and 24 we are seeing some pieces. Our 6th grade, again, that 6th grade class last year had a lot of growth. And there could be a lot of different reasons for why that happened. And until we start to drill down and look at the specific groups of students and what that experience looks like, which is that street data, right? Like those are those conversations about focus groups, student work samples. That helps us figure out what actually was different for those students to get that kind of growth. We can also see for our science, remember I told you we did great on our science, right? Like we had lots of kids that were proficient and advanced in our science. But in 2023, even last year, we weren't seeing a lot of growth in our science. And so this is something that is really important that we're keeping in mind with these new standards coming into place. Also going to point out to you our Keystone Biology. Again, we had those 2 blues, so I want to make sure that our Keystone Bio is going to continue on that trajectory with the new standards. And we have our Keystone Algebra in 2023 was well below, but in 2024, we hit some really great green with those students. And so this is even going to be those conversations about where did we see growth, in which grade areas, in which, with which teachers, with which groups of students. The last thing that I wanted to show you, one of the pieces of data that you don't have on here is CDTs. So we have a couple of different ways that we assess students to see where they might be scoring on their state assessments. We have the CDTs, which is the Classroom Diagnostic Test. And this, if you notice from 2024, our CDTs matched pretty closely to what the students' results look like. Interestingly enough, our Acadian scores, which were our reading indicators in the elementary school, also matched almost completely, which was a little surprising because they're not usually a one-to-one correspondence, but if we do think about whether students are reading on grade level and whether they're able to take a grade level test, they are showing that it's corresponding. Our iReady assessment, which is our math assessment, we also were able to see that same correspondence between our local assessments and our state assessments. So none of this was really surprising for those of us that are looking at this on a regular basis. And we know that there's areas that we need to continue to work on. So these are some of the ways that we are making these shifts right now. So the first is that we're going to be taking a look at the instructional core at every level. So the instructional core is thinking about our students and how they're engaging with the content. It's thinking about our teachers and their knowledge and skill. And it's thinking about the content itself in regards to our instructional materials. One of the first things that we've been looking at is really increasing the level of our students' active learning and engagement. In our middle school, they've already started to do some walkthrough opportunities and some opportunities for teachers to observe other teachers' classrooms so that they can see some of those different engagement activities that students can be doing. In particular, during some of those times where they're doing small group instruction. We're also really emphasizing regular attendance. Students need to be here so that we can give them really high quality instruction. And we want to make sure that our students are participating in our school and our district level planning. And in a little bit, we're going to talk about some of our surveys that we're hoping to do, some focus groups that we're hoping to do. It's really important that the student voice is driving the work that we're doing. I like to think about the job of us in education is that we want to make sure that our community and our businesses have the kind of employees they need and that our students have the kind of experience that they want. And so those are the two big groups that I really think about when we're doing the planning. And so making sure that our students are actively part of our planning committees and our honor steering committees, but are also able to give feedback through surveys and focus groups. We're also working to continue to make student learning visible. We've been working really hard to try and share out more and more of what is happening in our classrooms on a regular basis, and especially our teachers that are trying out new projects. For that, we're also having more work around our teachers' current, improving and building upon our teachers' instructional practices. I truly believe that teachers are the single most impactful piece when it comes to our students' outcomes. I can buy whatever curricular resource we want, but if we don't have teachers that really feel empowered to do the work in their classroom and feel supported and have what they need to be successful, we're not going to see those big shifts. So we are really focusing on increasing those feedback loops of making sure administrators are having more opportunity to be in classrooms with teachers, giving them feedback, and also taking feedback as administrators as well. We also have been shifting the way we do professional learning to try and have more ongoing job-embedded professional learning that's aligned to student outcomes. So working with our local intermediate unit to have some coaching come into our classrooms, especially for some of our newer teachers who may not have ever been taught classes on how do you support a student with emotional support needs in a first grade classroom. If you just didn't get that, we want to make sure they feel successful with that. We've also had an increase in time and protocols for our collaboration. I'm really, really proud of this. We just did a survey with our teachers to get some feedback on our professional learning so far this school year. So we've had a couple of different professional learning models this year. We have some staff development days, which are early release days, where our students are out a little bit early and our teachers are coming together to collaborate. And then we've shifted our in-service and our Act 80 days to offer some more personalized learning for teachers so they can choose from a menu of learning opportunities. They also can spend that time collaborating with their peers, working in their classroom, having meetings with parents. And based on the initial feedback, it was about 52 teachers earlier today, which I still think is a pretty good chunk of our teachers so far. 94% of them said that the early release staff development days were beneficial or extremely beneficial, and 100% of teacher respondents found the October and November format of a more personalized professional learning approach during the in-service and Act 80 days to be beneficial or extremely beneficial. So I was really proud. That's data just from today, and I think it's giving us an opportunity to continue to support our teachers. We've also been overhauling our induction plan and process. It's been working really well with our new teachers this year because we want to get them here and want them to feel really supported. And finally, and this is something that I think is important for the board and the community to think about, because we're going to be getting into budget season before we know it, right? Is that we want to make sure that we're providing academically challenging content through high quality instructional materials. So one of the first things that we've worked on this year is getting a curriculum review and purchase cycle in place. So it's not happening haphazardly, but on a more predictive way for our school district. We've also been looking at the refinement of our curriculum. The goal is that all of these pieces will be on our website as well, so that parents can have more access to see what our students are doing in their classrooms. We want to make sure that we have high quality instructional materials in place in all grade levels. Our science laboratories in our high school desperately need updates. It was something I wasn't aware of. They've been making do, and teachers do. They make do with what they have, but if we want to be a school district that is able to meet our students' needs and the needs of our community, we are going to need to have some conversations about making sure that our classrooms K to 12 have access to those resources. We also want to make sure that we're maximizing our funds that we currently have in place to address our most critical instructional needs. We did have our initial focus this year on our reading curricula in our elementary school. The curricula that we had in place is no longer supported. It was the 2011 edition of the resource, and so we have been having really good success with the program we've been piloting so far this school year, which is a knowledge-based curricula that's grounded in science and social studies as a big part of what they're learning in classrooms. We're also looking at different ways to have families be able to learn more about how they might support learning at home through some of our family events, especially at our elementary school. We're still looking to see how we can do more with our middle and high school. I'm a middle and high school parent, and I know that there's not a lot of times when we get to come in and actually talk about how we can best support our kids at home. And continuing to make our learning visible through our website and communicating with stakeholders with that. This is really kind of the overall thinking about our school planning. So I like to think about it like a logic model. If I know that our long-term outcomes are the things that we see hanging up around the walls in our room here, of how we want to change our outcomes for our students, then we have to be able to back map it. So what are the resources we need? What do we need to do with those resources, and how do we start measuring some of those outputs, right? So having more teachers attending professional learning, seeing what those practices look like in the classroom, that'll then get us to the short-term and long-term. And that's it. Do that in like half an hour, so I'm pretty proud of that. I know everyone's probably ready for it. Any questions?
Back to the PBOS system, can you explain the growth index a little bit better? Because I've been doing some research on it.
Yeah, what question in particular?
Like, you bring up the building level one here, and the growth index, if I'm not mistaken, is that what shows like how our students are growing or regressing in different like subject matters?
Yeah, in different subjects and in grades. Do you want to pull up one in particular?
Well, yeah, you pull up the middle school, for instance. Yeah, because it's a value-added system, and look at the growth index.
Yeah. So you want to look at the middle school in particular.
Yeah, some of our if I'm reading this growth index right, some of our buildings are concerning. But like the high school and that seems to have done tremendously well, and I hope that the change leadership will continue to do so.
PBOS is a year behind, right?
No, this will happen 2024.
It's 2024.
Yep, so this will be the last, so this students that tested this spring. So yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We definitely.
Yeah, because if you click on the growth index, I mean, some of these, like I'm looking at 7th grade math, it's like we got a 2.79 negative.
Yeah, so we are having some really difficult times in regards to growing our students, in particular in the middle school. One of the things that has come up is there have been some conversations with teachers who have taken a look at this and want to make sure that the instructional materials that were selected are the instructional materials that are going to meet the needs of students. So we can use this year in particular. So our 7th grade teachers came to me last spring and said, we really felt like this isn't meeting the needs of our students. And so what they did is they spent time this summer working at mapping out the areas that they saw as gaps in the current curricular resource and bringing in some additional resources and making some adjustments to instruction this school year. So one of the things that I want my teachers to be really empowered in is that if they have an idea of where the challenge is, I want them to feel really empowered to come up with a plan, gather data, and implement the plan. And so for 7th grade in particular, I am really hopeful that we're going to see some shifts in that area for that, in particular for that 7th grade, because they put quite a bit of time, not that my other teachers are not, but I know that this grade level in particular, because they saw that there were some gaps with that.
Because I wonder if there's like some curriculum deficiencies possibly, because I know personally a few students that are basically honor roll students in algebra, but they don't score well on the Keystone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you'd think it'd translate from
It
one
should.
to the other, and if it doesn't, you know, I mean, granted, test taking's stressful for some. I get it, I'm one of them myself, but, I mean, it should translate better between the two.
And that's the beauty of state assessments. What the state assessments tell us is how well our core curricula is meeting the needs of our students. And so there was a curricular product that was purchased before I came on board here that is being implemented at K to 8. It's very difficult to find a curricular product that works beautifully from K to 8 or K to 12. And so one of the things that we want to be really cognizant of, there's actually two things, is one, making sure that the teachers are utilizing the product in the way that it's intended to be used for in the classroom. And two, that if they are utilizing it and it's not giving us the results that we need, I subscribe to the teach with integrity as opposed to fidelity. And so if we know that using a product with fidelity is not giving us the results that we need for our students, then we need to be able to empower our teachers to work together to make sure that our students are getting adjustments in the classroom right in time to make sure that they're getting that. So this is not, I was not surprised by this. I tell people, some people laugh at me, I have like this healthy sense of urgency that I walk around with all the time. This is why I think it's important we do talk about the data, because it's important that we are having conversations about where there may be gaps that need to be remedied. And this is a really good example of that.
Like I said, I don't know if with the numbers head that I have, I could, you know, read and analyze the data. Problem is, I don't have the education right, so I don't have a clue how to fix it.
And it's really,
I'm trying to find you the money to pay to fix it, but that's about the best I can offer.
No, so, and it's not an easy fix, right? So.
Oh no, it's years in making. That's why I mean, when you
Absolutely.
see negatives like that, it makes me nervous that we got to start jumping on something.
It is that healthy sense of
progressive.
urgency.
Yeah.
That's what I live with every day, right? Like I want people to feel that sense of urgency because we can't be complacent. And I think something that's really important to keep in mind, and it goes back to when I was sharing that triangle, right? So anytime you make a change to one of these, you have to change all of them. And so we saw that we had a new instructional resource come in, okay? And I'm gonna say it's the world's greatest instructional resource for anything. It's an awesome instructional resource, it's high quality, everything. But if we're not changing the teacher knowledge and skill in the way that they're implementing that product, as well as changing the ways our students are engaging with the content, we're not going to see an impact. And so a lot of times people will say, like, can we just buy another program? Can we just buy another product? It's never that simple. It takes time, it takes effort. And so what I want to make sure that the board knows, and I'm hopeful or really in support of, is I know that my teachers are invested in making this even better. I heard that. When I have teachers come to me and say, like, can we do this? I want to give them the opportunity to try it out. If it doesn't work, we'll bring something else back to the table. But I'm really proud and excited that our teachers are saying, like, this is a concern, we want to do something different. And I think that as we continue to work through this, It takes 3 to 5 years to see a change that's going to actually be something we can see in something like a state assessment. But I'm not going to wait 3 years to see if a change is happening, right? If they're telling me that they've already been doing some things for a few years in a row and it's not working, then we need to come to the table to say what needs to change.
Yeah, if we got a curriculum that's not working, I mean, as long as we have enough data that proves it's not working, we need to cut and bait as soon as possible instead of spinning our wheels. I agree there.
Yeah, and I think part of it is making sure our teachers know how to use all of the pieces that go into it. So if we think about a really high quality instructional tool as something that has lots of opportunities for us. So I like to think about our curricular resource as like, this is the ground, right? This is what we have as a really high quality instructional resource. Now, how do we make sure that we know our students really well, we know what their needs are, and then we have opportunities for our teachers to come together and make those adjustments. And so that's been one of the most, I think, impactful things this year when I was reading about how teachers have been using the time during the early release days and their in-services. They've been coming together to say, we're gonna look at the data of where our students are and make adjustments together as a team. And so I wanna make sure they continue to have that time to do that. So when we talk about our calendar next year, we'll talk about what's gonna be good for our community, right? I do wanna make sure our teachers have that, especially with not having much collaborative planning time during the school day because of substitutes.
That is an issue.
It's my healthy sense of urgency. Any other questions?
Yeah, so as long as we, make sure we give them the proper training and everything we need, because you can have the world's best tool, but if people don't know how to use that tool, it's basically a rock and a hammer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just have a question about kind of the process that you all use, because understanding that when you look at this, I assume there's a good amount of analysis that you all have to do kind of personally to translate this into something meaningful for our students, right? Do you have a systematic approach? Like, do you have a list of variables that you sort of check this information against, things that might touch that sort of triad that you showed, but might not be included directly under, say, like teacher knowledge and skills, right? Like, do you plot this against what might be happening, like behaviorally within a certain area to kind of see where these things intersect? Like, is there a sort of a list that you put these, that you plot together?
So one of the things that we've been working on this year, and the elementary school has been one of the areas that we've been really pushing in on this. We know that there's a lot of things, and we'll just think about the student side of it, right? A lot of things that goes into whether or not a student is going to be successful. So we're looking at students' assessment data in reading, students' assessment data in math. We're looking at their attendance records when we're talking about challenges. We're also looking at behavioral referrals. We're also looking at things that may be going on in a student's life. And so a good example I can share for this is we are moving to have what we're calling transitional kindergarten classes. I'm really calling it a tier 3 kindergarten class, right? These are kindergartners that are still struggling to be really successful in the kindergarten setting, right? We are looking at multiple pieces to determine which of those students are going to most benefit from that smaller class setting. So we're looking at their assessment data, we're looking at their attendance, we're looking at whether they're late to school, not in school. We're looking at how many days that they might have been pulled out for other things. We're looking at any other supports that we're having. And some of the students that came up on our initial list, it's an attendance challenge, right? So moving them into a smaller class setting isn't going to be the best option for that student. We have to make sure that we then have a plan to address that individual challenge for that student. So I try to think about, when I think about data for our students, I know there's a lot of weight that some school districts will put on PSSA and Keystone data. It's really high level. That the data that's going to show us the most in regards to how our students are doing and how we need to adjust our instruction is that day-to-day data. So those are the conversations our teachers are having with students. It's actual student work samples. And so that's one of the things our teachers are starting to dive into more deeply is, I shouldn't have a student that gets an A in a class and then doesn't pass a Keystone exam, right? If the Keystone exams are aligned to grade level content, then I should know if I'm teaching grade level content in my class.
A challenge that we've had is if we have students that are coming in with some gaps, there are some students that are not getting opportunities to access grade level content on a yearly basis. So if they're getting that, and that starts in kindergarten, right? By the time they're getting to 5th grade, they're already years behind. And those are the students that if we start to kind of drill down with the PBOS, looking at individual students, we just had a student, I don't know if you're post this, I'm not giving student names or anything, but we just had a student that is in danger of not graduating from high school. I shared out during our high school improvement meeting, I have the number of students that dropped out last year, and it's really important that people keep in mind that those students were the same students that entered kindergarten super excited about what school was going to be for them. And at some point along the way, we didn't serve them the way that we should have, whether it was something that happened in their household or their life experiences, we still didn't meet their needs, right? I take that very seriously because I tell everyone should go to kindergarten orientation, that every parent is bringing their best and their brightest to us. We have to make sure that we're giving them the supports. So we looked at a student in particular that is in danger of not graduating, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get him to graduation. He's missing a lot of credits. And when I started to actually look at his PBOS over time, because I can drill all the way down to his first assessment in 3rd grade, this was a student that was proficient and advanced on his PSSAs in 3rd and 4th grade. And by the time he got to high school, he doesn't have enough credits to graduate. So somewhere along the way, we didn't do what we needed to do. And so that's just us having to be really reflective and having to make sure that we're using these student conversations to drive this. And so that's also why, like, I can put up percentages. I think it's important to look at student numbers. We don't have a district of 15,000 kids. Like, we should be able to know where all of our students are. So yes, I don't go into like the nitty gritty of how PBOS does their 2.345 because it's like a really weird calculation. But it is something that we look at multiple data points to show us where our students are. I hope that helps.
Yeah,
it's probably very long-winded question. Any other questions? And I'm always happy to have these conversations if someone wants to. Okay.
I like that teachers are getting together to discuss different things, and they're like all on the same things. They're all doing the same things now, which didn't happen before. One school was doing this, one school, and now it seems like all 4th grade. Yeah, I think they're complementary.
Yeah, we want to make sure we have a lot of transient students, so the experience should be, if you're a 4th grader here, it should matter where you're going. Everyone should get a really high quality 5th grade experience, and that's something we want to make sure, that it's not success by chance, like this is success by design. We're being very intentional about what we're providing to our students, and we have fantastic teachers, and so I want to make sure that they can do their job the way that they need to, and having that time helps them do that. All right. So, with all of that, that's the end of my assessment part of our time today. But we're still going to keep talking about data by talking about some other pieces. I lost my agenda here to tell you exactly what's coming up next. I know I need to give you an update on where we are with our comprehensive and our school planning. So we are still working through our comprehensive planning. I think that we are ready to be able to come up with a new vision for learning for our school district, and the high school is at the same place with what they are doing as well. And I will say that the students, that the students who have been coming have been a really refreshing part of that work. So with that, I know I have a couple of guests that are here. We want to talk about a survey opportunity for our students to take part in regarding career readiness and career exposure. Would you guys talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. My name is Teresa Peters, and I have for 8 years oversaw the Berwick Teen Center as well as now the Bloomsburg Teen Center. I've kind of shifted into more of a consulting role. I'm here with our vice chair for the cause, Damian Scobling, and we have been, over the years thinking of ways we can complement the programming and the education system at the school, but at the teen centers. We received grant funding through the Arconic Foundation, and with that, we were able to look at our metrics and work and partner with the Commonwealth University Social Work Department, and how that they can help us by gathering those metrics so that we can meet the needs of our communities, specifically the Berwick community that we're working here on filling those gaps with programming that would either be in the community or at the teen center. So we partnered with the BIDA. We're looking at very similar things as far as what students' interests are, right? And really gauging that, like you said, the street level. Dr. Shotwell said that street level, that's really like kind of where we're at with our, some of the survey questions that we're proposing to present to the students, and as well as teachers and even some focus groups. And really trying to figure out what the disparities are and how we can fill those gaps to complement the school system.
So for the board members that are at the table now, these are some copies of the survey that we would like to move forward with having our students opt into. Obviously, parents would be able to say that they don't want their students to participate in this. I feel very strongly that the data that comes out of this can dramatically help us to inform what our 6 to 12 course offerings look like. When I was able to meet with the individuals that were talking through this survey, there are a lot of barriers to students entering different career pathways that we don't necessarily recognize from the roles that we're in as educators. And so being able to have the opportunity to have some of this data at hand by someone that, like, we don't have to do the survey on our own, they'd be able to help us with our focus groups and things like that to get this really high quality information back so that we can start to make sure that we're making decisions about different pathways that we're offering to students, that we are addressing the needs of students and things that they're seeing as barriers to them entering different career pathways as well.
And the surveys were approved through the Institutional Review Board. So, I mean, they're high quality surveys that we worked, again, partnered with Commonwealth University, and Dr. Erdley could not be here tonight to speak on her, on the subject matter, but we have met several times with the school district, with Dr. Shotwell and Pam Hegland regarding these surveys.
I only have a couple copies of this one, like copies. So if academic affairs can review it, and if it's okay to move forward with, then we'd like to make sure that we could get the okay to do this on our.
Yeah.
A lot of our parents that we have, like disciplinaries, when we see that students need help, Pam always tells them to go to the teen center. That's where they get the most help.
So right, so our goal at the Teen Center is really to engage and inspire young people, right? And I think that just like obviously we've been talking about data and whatnot, we also need to just assess what their inspirations are and kind of guide them in that way. And so we obviously offer tutoring at the Teen Center that's been very helpful. It's a matter of getting students there. We do have a retired school teacher, a fantastic math tutor who's there Mondays and Wednesdays and can go from entry-level math all the way up to calculus. And, you know, other things that we do, you know, to help curb some of those behavioral issues. But I think really it's inspiring students and engaging them and keeping them active and letting them know that whatever it is that they're inspired by, that we can provide them the tools and resources to allow them to explore those options. And I know that the classroom sometimes is restricted for various reasons, as we've heard tonight, and how can we help support that education process and, you know, the student's behavioral issues on a holistic level. So, and then again, partnering with the Berwick Industrial Development Association, working with local employers, and, you know, not trying to, of course, catch those kids and making sure that we're not, you know, we're providing and decreasing those gaps.
A lot of times they don't get it at home, so they get it there.
And we do. We have a lot of kids who, you know, we know maybe aren't showing up to school. We've had numerous kids who've had attendance issues, and that is one of the things that we look at you know, is for graduation rates and absenteeism and how we can help support them so that they can and should attend the school. And we work with the guidance department here. We have counselors in the teen centers as well, so.
I think one important thing that I was drawn to when we talked through this survey is that there are questions in here that talk about some of our historically marginalized individuals. And when we think about 55.6% of our students are considered economically disadvantaged in the Berwick area school district. So these are the types of students that we're thinking about when we discuss being marginalized, disadvantaged students, right? These are students that are coming into us, and more than half of our students that are already coming in with a barrier to be able to access some of these opportunities. And so if we're able to have more information that we can share out, it does look different than in some of our neighboring school districts where the economically disadvantaged piece looks very different, right? So when we talk about economics in a school district, this comes down to our tax base. It comes down to some of the things that we want to be offering. We want to make sure that we have clear data that our students deserve the exact same things as a school district that has 0% economically disadvantaged students, right? So we want to make sure that we're creating opportunities for them. So
we also partner with the CSIU. We've gone to Colorado. We've seen different models of learning in different states, particularly Florida and Colorado, and what they're doing there. And it's really impressive. And again, we just want to support the school district as best we can. We have gotten approval and had submitted surveys at Danville Middle School. So, and we're working with Columbia Montour Vo-Tech as well as distributing surveys there. Of course, Bloomsburg is, you know, right in our backyard. So we'd like to continue these efforts. Dr. Erdley's department has done a great job of volunteering and spending a lot of time on this to make sure that it's right, and working with graduate level students as well as Bachelor of Social Work students.
The other pieces are continuing to move forward with some of the other surveys. So we did a teacher survey last year. We will most likely be moving forward with that again this year so that we can see some of those changes in regards to teacher perceptions at the school level and at the district level through our comprehensive planning work. And the last piece that we have is around some opportunities for DARE programming, and we have another guest who's going to speak on that.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Aaron Lucchini. I'm a police officer with the Salem Township Police Department. Currently, my role with that department is as a school resource officer for Berwick Middle School and East Berwick Elementary. I will tell you, when I accepted this position, my goal was to develop an SRO program that could be modeled by any police department in the country. Okay, I wanted that best program that we could possibly have. Okay, and I think we're on our way. I really do. And it's not just me. I'd like to acknowledge Mrs. Kupski, Mrs. Hegland, and Dr. Shotwell, who without their support, leadership, and guidance, I'd be floundering in my job. Okay. One other person I'd like to thank is Ms. Karen Finucane, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but in her role as Dean of Students, she's been a godsend to me with the way she's able to mentor me and help me relate to students is remarkable. But what I'm here to talk to you about tonight is the one thing that struck me as odd when I first got here and started making contacts with other school resource officers and other educators across the nation, is that we didn't have a DARE program here. And most people don't even know that DARE exists anymore. Well, I can tell you, DARE is alive and well. It's in 27 countries worldwide. Okay. So, a little bit of history about the program. It was established in 1983 as a joint venture between the Los Angeles Police Department and the LA Unified School District. It was originally a 17-week program. It was non-interactive, and it was primarily lecture and death by PowerPoint. Okay. It was implemented on a large-scale basis into middle schools in 1984, followed by high school in 1989. Okay. The original curriculum was proven to be ineffective almost from its onset. Okay, it just didn't work. And they knew that, and they kept beating the dead horse, poking it with a stick, and nothing happened. Fortunately, the program continued to evolve and improve until 2021, when the University of North Carolina, Greensboro completed its 3-year multi-longitudinal evaluation of the program. Its results were submitted for peer review and publication to the Public Library of Science. Okay? On April 28th of 2023, after a thorough peer review and evaluation, the Public Library of Science, as well as the National Institute of Health's National Library of Medicine, published its research article and reported the study's positive findings, stating that, quote, when compared to virtual control cases, the program had identifiable improvements in both a key psychosocial measure in terms of deterring the onset of alcohol use, drunkenness, drug use, and vaping. Outcomes suggest DARE officers have a positive influence in determining the onset of alcohol use, drugs, and vaping. While we speak tonight, you're going to hear me mention a couple acronyms. One is DARE. Is there anybody in this room who knows what DARE stands for? Anybody want to take a guess?
No, and I went through the DARE program.
No? How many people think it's drug abuse resistance education? It's not. That's old school. The acronym for DARE now is Define, Assess, Respond, and Evaluate. This is referred to as the DARE decision-making module. It's introduced to students in middle school and can be utilized to make healthy, responsible decisions for practically every decision you make in life. Not just drugs and alcohol, not just violence. Practically every decision that you have to make in life through adulthood. The next acronym I'd like to talk to you about is what we call keeping it real. REAL. Refuse, explain, avoid, and leave. This is a model utilized to teach youth appropriate resistance strategy. Okay? I'll date myself a little bit here. I remember our big resistance strategy when I was growing up. Nancy Reagan, just say no to drugs. Just say no. Well, I challenge you to go in any metropolitan area across the country and let me know how that worked out for us. The curriculums for the new DARE program are pre-K through high school. All the way. We use what's known as a scaffolding or spiraling teaching model, okay? Which means we're going to start a foundation or a base in pre-kindergarten or kindergarten. And we're going to continue to build upon what we've learned throughout the entire program. The curriculum for pre-K through 2nd grade are 8 posters that deliver standalone safety topics. And I will pass these around for everyone to see. They're covered in 10 to 15-minute classroom visits. Again, remember, these are pre-K through 2nd grade children. So their attention span, not that great, okay? So we keep it short. They also have take-home family activities that they can do with their family to reinforce what they learned in the classroom that day. When we move to 3rd and 4th grade, we have 4 lessons delivering, again, standalone health and safety topics covered with 15 to 20-minute classroom visits. Now, what's important to note here is I'm saying pre-K, 2nd grade, 3rd and 4th grade, they don't get this every year, Okay, ideally, you would get it pre-K, second grade, third or fourth, fifth or sixth, seventh or eighth, etc. What I'm hoping to introduce to the district is kindergarten, second grade, fourth grade, sixth grade, and eighth grade. Why? Because in kindergarten, we're going to lay the foundation. Okay? We're going to build upon that in second grade. And in fourth grade, we are preparing our students to move across the street, where they're going to get it again in sixth grade, and they're going to get it again in eighth grade. Why? Because we're preparing them to move across the street yet again. Okay? Fifth and sixth grade is where it starts to get great. We have multicultural curriculum that's developmentally appropriate and based on social emotional learning. It teaches fundamental skills that youth need to be safe, healthy, and responsible in leading drug-free lives. It consists of 10 lessons once a week, 30 to 45 minutes in length. We can tailor that to fit our schedule. There are some key points that I have to make sure that I cover to maintain fidelity of the program. But we also have some leeway in there so that we can fit it into our schedules. It's designed for 5th and 6th grade students, and again, this is evidence-based. It works. We have scientific data that I can provide to you upon request that proves this is beneficial to our children. 7th and 8th grade, the central message again is real. Refuse, explain, avoid, and leave. It teaches our youth to act decisively and responsibly in difficult situations. It teaches practical strategies that are not only easy to remember, they're easy and practical to use. Again, it's evidence-based, and it's a deep dive into our material. Additional enhancement lessons or presentation information that's available are topics such as marijuana, fentanyl, vaping, tobacco use, opioid, over-the-counter and prescription medications, online and social media safety. Who can agree with me that that's one of the biggest challenges that we as educators face today? I will tell you, Karen Finucane and I spent almost a day, a full day yesterday, diving into problems with children on social media. They don't understand the dangers that come from that. Mental health, that's a big one. How many of our students are struggling with mental health issues that we don't address? We talked about COVID earlier tonight. What did that do to our children's state of mind? Being locked in a house for a year, some of us longer. What did that do to our children? We will discuss commonly abused drugs, dextromethorphan. Does anybody know what that is? It's cough syrup. Who would think that our young people are walking around with a cup or a water bottle or a Yeti, sipping cough syrup all day to maintain a high? It's happening. It's happening. Kratom, marijuana pixie sticks, and PCP. These are all things that we can touch on as enhancement lessons to the program. The nice thing is, we can provide this information not only to our students, but to our community and our parents or guardians as education and information topics. Okay? Startup. Everybody wants to know how are we going to start this up. Okay, what's the cost to us? I will tell you, since this program is new to the district, Dare America will donate to us free of charge any materials that we need to get started. After that, it would be our responsibility to purchase what we need. How do we do that? Well, I'll tell you. This program is a big deal for a lot of students. When you finished high school, what did we give you? Graduation, right? Graduation. So guess what we give our kids when they complete the DARE program? A graduation. And it's not just 10 people in a room eating pizza. These are kids. You have to make it a big deal. We have to have guest speakers. We have to have fire trucks. We have to have additional police officers there, okay? During this graduation ceremony, we can have a fundraiser such as selling DARE merchandise, t-shirts, etc. DARE will allow us to sell their products and make a profit, provided it's going back into the program, okay? I can't take a box of DARE t-shirts to the flea market on a Saturday afternoon and think I'm gonna make 20 bucks that day. But if I'm selling t-shirts in the hallway at these students' graduation and they know that all that money is going back into these kids, is being reinvested into our community, they have no problem with that. Other ways that we come up with money are, and this would be up to me, to go to local businesses and solicit donations. Go to the Masonic Lodge. What can you give me? Can you give me 50 bucks toward this? Great, I'll take it. Thank you very much. Okay. AMVETS, American Legion, VFW, all of those organizations want to give back to our community. And let me tell you the biggest thing that I've noticed about people from Berwick. Okay? People that go to Berwick School District, most of them don't leave. Most of them don't leave. They graduate high school and they stay. So we're not investing our money to send a child to Montana. These children are going to be future leaders of our community. Your community, my community. Okay? How many of us have kids that go to the school district? I do. Okay? My son's one of the reasons I took this job. Okay? So we are investing not only in children's future, we are investing in our community. And the last thing I'd like to cover is, at some point there's going to be a new vehicle in that parking lot. It's going to say police right across the side. And it's not going to be brand new, but it's going to be newer than the one I got now. Okay? But the intention is to have that thing lettered with our school resource patch. Okay? This is not a traditional Salem Township Police Department patch. It's designed specifically for the SRO in this district. It will have that patch on it instead of our traditional patch. It will say school resource officer on that vehicle. And somewhere on that vehicle, the DARE logo is going to be on there. So we're going to promote this thing. And the first question I got from my chief is, when you're not in school in the summer, you're out on the streets, are you going to want to drive that vehicle out on regular patrol? Well, you better believe it. You better believe it. Because this is a program that I believe in. Okay? Like I said, my goal is to be the best. Anything else is not acceptable. Anybody see Talladega Nights? Good movie. You ain't first, you're last. Okay? And my goal, again, is I want this school district to be first in everything.
You'd be able to look at NASCAR.
Well, I told my chief, we'll paint that car up like the NASCAR if we'll get the message out. So, I think initially, very low investment, high rewards. I mean, if you're the kind of person that needs to look at this from a business stance, it doesn't get much better than this. So, thank you for your time, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So this is one of the pieces that if we are able to move forward with, it, we would like to put on the agenda for approval to begin mapping it out for the
this school year, to start offering for some of our students. So we can have more discussion too, and it is something we would need to move forward as a district.
Ideally, we would like to roll a very condensed shake and bake version out to 8th grade students this year to prepare them to go to high school. And then implement it with the remaining grades in the fall of next year. And again, I would suggest kindergarten, 2nd grade, 4th grade, 6th grade, and 8th grade. They do have enhancement lessons for the high school. However, with some jurisdictional boundaries, with the high school being in a different county, we would have to address some other issues and possibly get another officer.
That's what I was wondering. Could we bring West Berwick, was that what you were thinking, bring them up here for an assembly? That you could do it all here, like, or at the
We're working on some flexibility.
creativity?
We
So
did
that you
talk
can-
about why he, if he was to go there, that then we can get some other coverage for him over here while he is there, but for him to be able to go to then Westboro and present it in person with them as well. And potentially trying to get some other officers that will get trained in the program as continuing and growing the program as then there are specific training guidelines that needed to be in law enforcement in order to be trained.
Yes.
So we are trying to get others
In order to
interested.
you have to be a police officer or a deputy sheriff. I will tell you that I've been in law enforcement for almost 20 years. And before that, I was in the Army for 4 years. So I've been to a lot of training. And this was one of the most academically challenging trainings I have ever been to. One of the most exciting, one of the most rewarding, but academically, it was tough. I knew every minute that I was there. I've been out of school for a long time. So, but thank you for your time. I truly do appreciate it.
That's the end of our
Did
formal
everyone get
agenda,
to see this?
so we just have opportunities for any comment or questions.
Can I ask a dare question? As a person who went through the first not super efficacious cycle in the 90s, I'm thinking about how many more folks now, students now, are touched by this stuff in ways probably more students than in the 80s and 90s in our communities.
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering if the program has adjusted a bit to account for that if you're speaking to very large groups of students. So if you were to put many students in an assembly and then speak at them to this, knowing there are some students in there who might have lost parents to ODs, who might have adults in their homes who are actively using, has the program adjusted to try to account for that stuff, or are they gonna feel cornered and then get sent
I
home?
can actually help with these questions. So
Thank
we
you.
asked these questions too when he came and spoke with us. This isn't designed to be something that's done in an assembly. And so it is, when we really think about this as a curricular resource that we will be doing, it would be in smaller groups of students. Also, I don't feel like it's fair to any of us to say to him, you now need to present to 80 kids. We know that that's not the way that they learn best. And so it would be smaller groups. We've already been having some conversations about whether in phys ed and health class, this is a good space for it. For the younger kids, it's easy because it's something to be done right in their classroom with their teacher there in a smaller group environment. Because that is something that is, I went through the first day or two, and that you don't want anyone to get in that space. So I wouldn't want him to be in that kind of environment, and I wouldn't want our kids to be in that space either.
I think the large group environment is probably one of the SIDS in the past, really.
Typically, this is done in, you're going into a classroom with a classroom size audience.
With a teacher there.
With a
as
teacher
well.
present.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other questions, public comment? I'm not calling it, no, I'll call it to adjourn. I don't know, someone who's from the academic affairs, I guess you have to like call it to adjourn, I don't.
Lynn?
Thank you. Thank you all
Thank you.
for coming.
Thank you.